Hello and welcome back to AJM Learn. So today I'm going to show you how to customize Squarespace's Colima template. This is all just built-in stuff. So basically the idea is you are keeping the template as is and just placing your elements in here, not doing any redesigning, but showing you how to still make it your own. So first step would be to change the color palette. So you want this to, of course, match your branding, whatever that might be. I put some tips in the post about how to choose those colors. So check that out. So first step is going to be when you're on the back end here, over here on the far right, click the paintbrush, which takes you to site styles. Of course, I don't know if you guys can even see this pop up, but it's been a little glitchy. Click into colors. Okay, so here you see the built-in palette for Colima, which is like this gray. So first you're going to go into edit palette. And here's where you're going to go ahead and set that color palette. Now, this is all in the post, but the kind of my like cardinal rule I tell people say when we're talking about colors in Squarespace is keep the far left one white. So basically how you set these, Squarespace is gonna automatically place the colors where it thinks they should go. So if you need a white and basically you need a black or a really, really dark gray, and then you kind of work in from there. So first one to the left should always be white or your version of white. So if you have like a really, really light cream or something, but keep in mind that'll be the copy of like your body font, all of that. You can of course tweak it later, but general idea, keep this one white. Next one in, I typically do either a really light gray or like a taupe or maybe a really, really light tint of one of your brand colors. Just think like this is going to be probably something you would use as a background. So how these background colors kind of alternate throughout, just think of it that way. This middle one, I tend to make this one your brand like primary color. So if you have like a blue in your logo, I tend to make this one that color. This one will be applied, a lot of times to buttons. It might be applied to some backgrounds. You can always change it if needed. The fourth one, I do either a secondary color, so a color you want to use a little more selectively, but still want the palette, or like a dark gray following, and then black at the very end. The last one should either be black or your version of black, which could be like a really dark gray, a really dark brown. But think about like that's going to be kind of the color of your body copy. Again, you can tweak it, but general rule of thumb there. So basically you click into any of these and you can change the hex code or however you want to input it. Hex code's usually easiest. There are some preset color palettes here in Squarespace. For example, you could quickly switch this to a warmer palette and have these browns, which does not look bad at all. So something to play around with. Some of these palettes I think are like a little crazy, but there are some options there. So go crazy there. The next thing to note is when you go back to this site styles page, down here under customize your themes, this is where you get really, really specific. So as you scroll down the template, you'll see like this is darkest one, dark two, and you'll see those correlate here. So basically when you're setting your sections, you're setting the color of them, the theme, as you're adding the sections, or you can go into any section and always change the theme. And this is what it's correlating with. So basically we can come in here to dark one and say, okay, well, when I'm using the dark one theme, I want it to be backgrounds this color, all these fonts are this color, my buttons are these colors, etc. So you can totally tweak everything and get really specific. So you do have kind of this, 5 color palette, but you can get even more specific with it in here if you wanted to say, okay, I want my bright one to be a lighter version of this pink or whatever. You can actually come into the theme itself and change the color, background color, and customize further from there. So those are the basics on changing color for the Colima template. Okay, next I want to talk about changing fonts on the Colima template. So let me exit what we were doing. Again, you're going to go into your site styles. So click the paintbrush. Keep getting a error pop up. Okay, go into fonts. So you really have two options here, kind of like the colors. They do have built-in options with Squarespace. So you can come here. You have the Acumen Pro set up. These fonts, they look perfectly nice. If this fits your brand, you could totally keep them. You go to switch and you can flip through some of their preset font pairings, some of which are insanity in my opinion. Like if this fits your brand, go for it. But yeah, but there are some nice ones in here. You can switch between all serif, or sorry, sans serif, serif, or mixed. So there's actually some pretty decent pairings. If this is not your specialty, pick a really nice one and like go with it. But back in the main fonts panel, you can also just keep whatever's here. No need to like worry about that. Down here under global text styles, you can go into headings and actually browse all fonts, and you can specify and just choose your own. So there are, I want to say thousands. They're going to take forever to load, but like that, look at that scroll bar. There are literally thousands of fonts. You can choose the weight, all these things, line height, letter spacing, etc. And then most importantly, you'll do this no matter what. Make sure you're changing, adjusting the sizes of your headings. So a lot of times I like to go to a page where you have all the sizes and just start playing around with the sizing. So same thing with the paragraphs. You can totally come in here, change it as needed. Buttons are weird because you kind of edit them in two places. We'll talk about buttons later. And miscellaneous is just, I don't know, just that, miscellaneous. I usually keep this whatever, the same as paragraphs. And then in assigned styles, this is where you get really specific with some other really important stuff, like your site title. If you don't have a logo, this is going to show. Most importantly, like your navigation, your header button, which should, in my opinion, look like your other buttons. I don't know why it doesn't respond the same. And a bunch of other like miscellaneous things here that you may or may not use, like your form block and blogs. So all those little miscellaneous specific site styles will be in here. Okay, that is basically it on changing fonts in the Colima template, and we have a lot of other really good pointers in the post. Okay, next we'll talk about buttons. So while we're in here, let's go back in our site. We're still in the site style, so inside this paintbrush, go to buttons. Quick note, I have a lot of this in the post, but you can set primary, secondary, and tertiary button styles. So anywhere you have a button on the page, let's say here, you can actually click in the button and switch between these styles. So if you wanted a style that was solid and a style that's outlined, you could have a style that's rounded, a style that's not. That seems very busy to me. I always suggest, unless, if you're a seasoned designer and, can use these things nicely. So maybe maybe you add a button here in the hero, and maybe that one's like, stands out. Maybe it's different. Maybe that one's an outline button and the rest are solid or something like that. But just make sure you're, not doing something crazy. So I always kind of suggest, I typically just use the primary buttons. Sometimes I'll use the others, but here under primary, you can set the buttons font. So you go in here and you'll get all these settings. The shape of it, square, rounded, pill. They have some other shapes that I tend to not use. You can even do custom corners. If you didn't want it to be filled, but you want it to be outlined, you'd go over here and choose that option. So you can do that. If you did do the outline, you would then need to make sure you're actually setting the stroke of the outline and then kind of the padding or spacing of the button here. So that's how you get the actual button style. Confusingly enough, after you're done with that, you're probably like, okay, how do I change the color? So you have to actually go back to the colors tab and into your themes to change the button color. So for example, bright 2, I would go into bright 2. And you can actually click on the button, by the way, and it'll take you to it. Sometimes it likes to click the actual button, which really messes us up though. So ignore me. Let's just not do that. But you can, but sometimes it does exactly what it just did. Okay, so bright 2, I'll go back to show all and scroll down to button here. So I haven't checked. Let's assume this is a primary button. You can come in. Nope, it's not. There we go. This one's set as a tertiary button. So you can see that when I changed the tertiary color, it changed with it. So you might want to check that when you're going through the template, see which buttons are being used. I'll exit without saving because that red was insane. But that's how to change your button styles. Okay, and next I'll show you how to change the colors in the Colima template. Sorry, not the colors, lies, the photos. So if you go to edit, so now you're editing this page, two different types of photos. So first we have kind of our background photos. So if you hover over that section, click edit section, go to background, you would just click replace and it's going to prompt you to upload a new photo. You could also browse the stock images. I think they pull them from Unsplash. So either one, you can just place your new photos there. Super simple. You can add some image effects and get crazy in here. One thing to note is the overlay color with these. So if you flip over to colors, this is where you're setting the theme. So for example, if I change the theme here to bright white, you would see everything would flip. So this was the dark theme telling it, hey, we want white font, everything that's set in the dark theme. But back under background, you can actually play around with the overlay opacity, and that is set by the theme. So whatever color that kind of background is. So that's how you change the color and the overlay. And then any regular image, just click on it, click the pencil, and same thing, you're just going to click replace, or you can even click the trash can. It'll give you an upload symbol. So pretty simple to change out photos. Over here under design, you can get crazy with the fit and fill and shape and overlay and image effects and all of that. But as that's not part of the Colima template, I'll leave that for now, but you always have those options as well. And then this is just a fun part, but I want to show you a few just of Squarespace features, especially if you're new to this, a few little fun design features that would look really nice specifically with the Colima template. This template's it's boxy, it's pretty straightforward, it's very minimalistic, which is great. But you could add a little bit more of, just a little bit something different with these few little tweaks. So in any section, let me scroll down a little. If you go to edit section, scroll down and you'll see this option for a divider. It might even show you, it has this little ad here because it's kind of new. So if you toggle on divider, you'll see it'll just kind of give you one, but you can change the shape. You can change if you want the stroke, don't want the stroke, the type of stroke, if you want it to be dotted, the color of the stroke, thickness, etc. It's kind of fun. You can even shuffle if you're like, hey, I don't really know. It'll shuffle through all the options. And then maybe you're like, okay, I like this one, but go into here and you can start tweaking all the little things or playing around with all the options. So dividers are a really fun option here. I'm going to just go ahead and exit out of that. The next thing I like to use, I say a lot, I use it on most sites in some way, but you want to use it sparingly. Kind of like all these you want to use sparingly. You don't want to just, no overkill here. But if you want to highlight any text, so taking care, let's say mind, body, and soul. Let's say we want to make that stand out. Highlight that text, and then here in the toolbar, you'll see this A with a squiggle line underneath it. Click that. And then in the pop-up, which hopefully you can see because I'm only sharing one window, but in the pop-up, you have lots of options for highlighting. You have different underlining options. You can change the color of the underline. You can either choose something from your palette or do something custom if you want to get really crazy with it. Hey, cool, I want this to really stand out. You can even add an animation to it, and you can, tweak this as needed. So this is a really cool way to highlight some text. Something I use, again, often, but you don't want to overdo it on your site. And then lastly, I wanted to show you, I'll save that. Last, I want to show you back over here in site styles, animations. So this is one other thing. The Colima template naturally comes with no animations on, so you can totally add that. These are site-wide animations. You'll see it kind of happening here. So as you scroll down the page, it's how things appear on the page. So I have it here as fade in. You can change the speed of it. So as you scroll, it's faster or slower. And you can play around with these different options and see what you like. Animations can be, in my opinion, sometimes a little distracting. So you want to make sure to choose one that's not distracting, but still, kind of works for your brand. And lastly, I want to show you, totally optional. If this is way outside of your comfort zone, don't do it. But I'm a big CSS nerd. I love being able to customize my sites. So I'll show you how to add a couple of CSS hacks that I think work really well specifically with the Colima template. So if you go into a website, here's where all your pages are. Scroll down to website tools. This recently moved, custom CSS. So I'll copy and paste from the post. The first one is to, let me scroll down to an image block. To zoom an image on hover, it's just again, a cool effect because this is a pretty stagnant, especially if you're not actually using site-wide animation. This is a pretty stagnant, straightforward template. So let's add some interest. So I put all this in the post. If you're not familiar, I've shown you how to find your block IDs. I use a Google extension. So I want to grab the block ID of this photo, drop it here before the colon. And then you'll see now when I hover, it zooms. So you want to do that with each photo. So again, something you don't want to overuse. So maybe I would, do this just for these top two photos, whatever you think works, because these are ones that it looks like people would actually be hovering over because maybe they click into them, maybe not, but just a cool option there. You always want to make sure too to label your CSS. So I like to be like home. I typically do like home. And then under that, I'll say Zoom photos or something like that. So make sure to label it, keep it really clean. Next fun trick is to add a drop shadow to any block. So this could work, scroll down. So I would say drop shadows just to make sure I'm, labeling my CSS. So for this one, you can add this to anything, but again, since this is a pretty stagnant, like straightforward template, let me get to maybe here we go, a photo on a white background. If you wanted to add a little bit here, find this block ID, throw it here, and you'll see, of course, it wants us to, sometimes every now and then, the CSS needs you to refresh, especially lately, it's been a little glitchy. So if you don't see it pop in, just refresh. And then as you can see, the drop shadow is now there. You can adjust the colors and everything here, the shadow itself. So you can add this to any block. You can add it to a photo. You could add it to, there's no buttons on this page, but you could add it to a button. So maybe like back on the home page, let's say we really want this button to stand out. Just copy that, grab the new block ID, put that in. Of course, it wants us to refresh again. So fun. But then you'll see that drop shadow is now on the button. So you can add that to, any element on the site that you think needs it, but typically used for like solid elements. Like you can do it on text. Sometimes it looks a little crazy. Sometimes it looks nice. But usually I use it for like photos. And then last, I like to change the header button color. So the header button, this button here in the header, is dictated by the color, the theme of the first section on the page, which sometimes to me, I don't know, doesn't make sense because I want the header button to like be it. Like if I had a button here in this section, or if I'm using this theme color somewhere else, like I don't want a specific that button to have to reflect the same color as the header button. So I like to change the header button. When you drop this in here, it's going to have whatever this green color is that I had preset, but all you do is change the hex code here, make sure to keep your important tag, and it's going to change just the header button throughout your whole site. I use this a lot just because, again, sometimes I like this button to be like a tertiary color we're using nowhere else on the site to make it really stand out, because this is probably your big call to action, like book or contact or all of that. So that's it. Those are all the ways that you can jump in here and customize this template. And I mean, just with these color changes and, changing the photos out, fonts, all of a sudden it's completely your own. So hope you enjoy.